On my first night as a conductor, I thought the scariest thing about the job would be the hours. Midnight to 6, 200 miles of track through forests and farmland, almost no stations, just whistles and wind. Dispatch didn't even want a passenger guy. They needed someone to check freight seals and log cargo weights. "Easy run," my boss said, sliding a clipboard across the counter. "Sign here, head for engine 42. The manifest was routine: pallets of grain, crates of parts, refrigeration cars. But stapled to the back was another sheet I wasn't supposed to get. Passenger manifest. South Line. It listed 20 names, each one neatly typed, complete with seat assignment and destination. I grinned, assuming a mix-up, until one name snagged me. Evelyn Kerr.
I knew it. Everyone in town did. She died last month. Car accident just outside the crossing. The newspaper still sat on my fridge, her obituary printed in black and white. Curiosity pulled me down the list. Robert Maley, drowned in the quarry. Sister Agnes, the old nun buried behind St. Bridget's. All dead. Every single one. The paper smelled faintly of metal, as if it had been stored inside the train itself. I told myself it was a prank. Rail gossip, newbie hazing. I set the passenger sheet aside and focused on the freight numbers. Outside, the night pressed heavy around the engine shed. Far off, something groaned down the tracks, a whistle halfway between a whistle and a sigh. I swore I felt it vibrate through the paper under my hands. Then the dispatcher's radio crackled 5 sharp beats, the signal for boarding complete, except this run didn't carry passengers. Every conductor I met said the same thing. The tracks get in your blood. After enough nights, the rhythm of steel and timber replaces your heartbeat. You start moving when the train moves, sleeping when it sleeps. That first shift, I tried to imitate the veteran's calm. I checked seals, logged temperatures, counted cargo cars twice. A full moon spilled over the yard, bright enough to silver every cable and coupling. When the engineer, a proud-shouldered man named Reeves, climbed into the cab, he gave me the smallest nod, a ritual greeting, nothing friendly. "You keep your log straight, you stay awake, and you never ride car 9, he said. I thought he was joking. Engine 42 was an old workhorse, humming low even at rest. The inside smelled of oil and coffee gone bitter. Reeves handled her like something sacred. He barely spoke once we rolled out of the yard, preferring the language of levers and gauges. I learned quick, a conductor doesn't make noise unless something demands it. Our route cut through forgotten country. The first 20 miles ran flat alongside black marshland, cattails glistening under the moon. After that, the elevation sharpened, curving between ridges where no cell signal reached. A few towns sparkled far in the valley, pools of light so small they looked like reflections, not places people lived. Every hour I took a full walk down the consist, lantern in hand, steel stairs ringing beneath my boots. Metal groaned under the cold, freight placards blinked by in my beam. Frozen produce, 2,000 pounds. Machinery, handle with care. Nothing unusual. The quiet between clacks felt endless, hypnotic. More than once I swore I heard breaths riding the wind off the cars, but I chalked it up to echo. We passed the first switching station at 0147. The platform lamps burned, but no attendants waited. Reeves didn't slow. "Automation," he muttered. "They run it from Central now." Yet as we thundered past, I caught movement through the glass booth, a figure raising an arm in slow salute. I couldn't tell if he was real or reflection. By 03, the hills walled us in. Our headlight carved a single tunnel of light into the dark. Reeves glanced at his watch, marked something in his own ledger, then handed me a clipboard. "Check the rear seals again. Make sure we didn't pick up extra weight." "Extra weight?" I laughed. "From where?" He only shrugged. "Sometimes a hitchhiker climbs up. Sometimes they ain't the breathing kind." His tone didn't suggest humor. When I stepped between cars, the air felt thicker, heavier than before, the rails vibrating deep underfoot. Far behind us, another whistle moaned, a long, hollow call that didn't match our schedule. Reeves didn't react. Maybe he didn't hear. At 03:15, I noted our speed, logged the mileage, and tried to ignore the faint rattle coming from the rear.
Routine keeps you sane out here, I told myself. Routine and rules. For the moment, both still held. But ahead, the radio crackled once. 5 sharp beats. The same boarding signal from the yard. No one should have transmitted it.
At first, I thought it was a reflection, moonlight bending off the freight cars, but as I made my third walk down the consist, I saw it clearly, a glow seeping through the coupling between cars 7 and 8. Freight cars don't glow. I hesitated at the junction, lantern swinging in my grip, metal humming underfoot. Reeves's order drifted back through memory. You never ride car 9. I'd counted 8 so far. Technically, the next should have been the last. It took effort to make my boots cross the steel plate. The air changed the instant I stepped over. The smell, old perfume, coal smoke, and something faintly sweet, almost like lilacs long dead. My breath fogged, though the night was mild. This car wasn't freight. Rows of velvet seats reach into the dark like teeth into a throat. Ceiling lamps glow dim gold, flickering under soot-smudged glass. Dust should have coated everything, but it didn't. The upholstery shone clean, the brass polished. I ran my hand along one of the seats. Warm. The windows showed nothing of the forest outside, only pitch, like the car itself mirrored nothing beyond its walls. Somewhere near the center aisle came a soft rhythmic noise, similar to card shuffling or cloth brushing. Hello? My voice felt wrong here, swallowed before it could echo. No answer, just the faint hum of steel beneath us and the heartbeat thump of wheels.
I took 3 slow steps forward. On one seat lay a woman's hat, red feathered, pristine except for a black scorch mark along the brim. It looked freshly set down. The air pressure shifted. My ears popped as if altitude had changed. Then a sigh breathed through the rows, audible but bodiless. The lamp nearest me flickered twice and steadied. Something clicked beside my hip. I looked down. The emergency door latch had flipped itself halfway open, metal tongue shivering in the lamplight. I backed away, bumping into the doorway. Cold traveled up my spine like liquid frost. The glow dimmed behind me, one light after another ebbing until only my lantern still burned. Back in the proper freight car, air rushed in, a gasp from reality reasserting itself. I slammed the coupling latch shut and stood panting until my pulse found rhythm. When I returned to the cab, Reeves didn't look up from the gauges. He said only, "You didn't open any doors, did you?" I choked out a laugh. "No." "Good," he muttered. "Once they're open, they don't close right." He didn't ask what I'd seen. He didn't have to.
By morning, I almost convinced myself I had dreamed the whole thing. Fatigue plays tricks, and the rails have a way of turning night into fever. Still, the heat from that seat lingered in my palm, and the scent of smoke clung to my jacket. At the depot, I filed my first official report. Freight logs, speed, brake tests, all by the book. When I reached incidental notes, I paused, pen hovering. Finally, I wrote, "Observed additional carriage between cars 7 and 8. Passenger design unlit on manifest." The clerk behind the glass, a gray man with coffee teeth, frowned. "What line was this? 42? "Yes, sir." He shuffled paper. "There's no passenger stock on that route. Hasn't been for 50 years. I saw it myself. Seats, lamps." He cut me off with a tired shake of the head. "Manifest's clean. 8 cars, no more. Check your numbering next time." Back at the yard, Reeves waited beside the engine smoking a cigar that smelled like tar. I told him what I'd written. He studied me for a long time, expression unreadable, then said quietly, "You logged it." "Yeah." He exhaled through his nose. "They'll strike it." That night, I checked the roster. They already had. My report showed a red line through the words "additional carriage." Beneath, a neat signature from the yardmaster. No variances detected. Out of stubbornness, I walked the consist again. 8 cars, couplings tight, seals intact, numbers sequential. No trace of soot on the buffers, no brass fittings, no hint that another carriage had ever existed. Only the faint smell of lilacs hung on the air, drifting off steel like perfume poured into gears. The radio kicked once while I was bent to check a wheel. Just static and a hum that almost formed a word. I barked into it. "Reeves, you on channel?" His reply came thin. "Stay with the train. Don't answer calls you didn't make." What's that supposed to mean? He didn't respond. Static filled the cab for several miles afterward, then died completely, leaving only the mechanical heartbeats of wheels and track. When dawn painted the rails silver, I glanced out the side window. For one heartbeat, the reflection sliding past showed more cars trailing behind than physics allowed. A long snake of them, stretching into fog. The sun blinked across glass and the image vanished. Reeves' knuckles whitened on the throttle. "You counted 8?" he said. "Yeah." He nodded once. "Keep counting it that way." He never looked at me again for the rest of that shift.
The third run should have been ordinary, but nothing about the line felt right anymore. Even at idle, the steel thrummed like muscle under skin. Reeves avoided me. He spent the night staring straight ahead, one hand gripping the throttle, the other tracing circles on a battered silver coin he kept by the console. He jumped when the radio hissed, which made me jump too. At first, it was the usual chatter from dispatch, speed confirmations, weather warnings. Then something cracked down the auxiliary line, a soft click, another, then a faint murmur sliding through the static. "Tickets, please." Reeves' head snapped toward the speaker. "Ignore it!" What was that? "Just bleed from the yard intercom. Happens sometimes." He lied too fast. But the voice came again, clearer, drifting low as though it rode beside the train instead of through the radio, and it wasn't the same tone. Deeper, smokier. "Compartment 4, manifest check." My stomach clenched. I pulled the clipboard from its hook, fingers numb. The names were still there, the same list I'd glimpsed that first night. The dead passengers struck through in heavy pencil. Another burst of static, then a different voice. Feminine, breathy, close. "Robert Malley, present. Evelyn Kerr, present." Each name coincided with a tone vibrating through the floor, a low B flat that rattled bolts loose in my skull. I shut off the radio. The hum didn't stop. "Reeves, it's coming through the rails," I whispered. He didn't answer.
Outside, fog licked along the ground, red taillights barely visible through it. Sparks flashed under the carriage as if other wheels ran beneath ours, an invisible twin line mirroring us. I leaned to the window. A face looked back in the reflection, mine, wide-eyed, until another formed behind it. A woman's, pale and calm, lips moving soundlessly in rhythm with the phantom checklist on the radio. Evelyn Kerr. I stumbled back, knocking over a thermos. Reeves slammed the window shut and barked, "Don't listen. They'll learn your name through the echo if you listen long enough." "They're saying the names on the manifest." He laughed, too tight. That's what a manifest is for. Then, slowly, he reached beneath the dash, flipping a hidden switch. The speaker cut out entirely with a pop. The hum lessened to a faint vibration, but didn't vanish. Every mile they ride the line. That's the price for easy freight through ghost country. Keep your eyes front, and don't read names aloud. I wanted to press him, but the train wailed through a curve then, drowning everything. When the noise faded, something tapped under my booth seat in rhythm with the rails. 3 beats. A pause. 5. Morse, maybe. Later, when I checked my watch, the glass was fogged from the inside, and faintly etched beneath the mist was a word I hadn't spoken in hours. Present.
I cornered Reeves the next evening before departure. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Eyes red, shirt half untucked, that silver coin still flipping through his fingers like a charm he couldn't stop touching. "You're gonna tell me what's wrong with this line," I said, "or I'm quitting tonight." He weighed that, sighed through his nose, and motioned for me to follow him into the maintenance shed. Inside, the smell of diesel and rain wrapped the air.
He leaned close so the other yardman wouldn't hear. "There's nothing wrong," he said, which of course meant there was everything wrong. He rubbed his temples. "Look, the tracks from here to Dullard Ridge cut through some old ground. Some say cemeteries, some say nothing at all. Just history too heavy to sink. The company can't fix it, so they pretend it's superstition, but the older hands know better." He reached into his coat and handed me a folded note, edges grease-stained. "Keep this. Don't show it to dispatch." Inside, in coarse pencil, were 5 short lines. "Never open a door marked Car 9. If you hear knocking from the empty cars, don't answer. Never read a manifest aloud after midnight. Don't pick up passengers between towns. The train always collects more than freight." I looked up, puzzled. "You wrote this?"
He laughed without humor. "No, been passed down since before I was born. Copy it, burn it, pray it sticks." He took back the silver coin, turning it over to show an engraving, the outline of an old locomotive with 9 carriages behind it. The 9th had been sanded almost smooth. They say the first conductors tried to count the cars, tried to document everything. After 9, there's something else, something that keeps the line balanced. You feed it schedule, routine, names, whatever keeps commerce moving, and it stays quiet. Forget the rules, and it comes riding up front to remind you. The whistle blew 2 short bursts outside, signal for departure. Reeves pocketed the coin. "Why stay if you know all this?" I asked. "Because someone has to drive them," he said. "And better me than someone who doesn't know how to keep the doors shut." He stepped into the night before I could answer. I unfolded the note again. There was a faint handprint of charcoal smearing the margin, 4 long fingers, and no thumb. By the time I reached the cab, the engines were already screaming. Reeves sat in his seat, eyes forward. The coin tapped steady against the throttle. We rolled out of the yard, rules clutched tight in my pocket. I told myself I'd follow every one of them, but rules only matter until the night offers you a reason to break them.
The storm rolled in without thunder, just a wall of rain and wind that swallowed the tracks ahead. Even the beam of the headlight looked weak, a narrow cone of gold suffocating in gray water. Reeves muttered that we'd slow through the ridge, but he kept his hand steady on the throttle. By 1 a.m, we were alone in a world of noise. Rain hammered the metal harder than any drum. Between gusts, the line screamed, that long violin wail you get when wind meets tensioned steel. I almost didn't hear the first knock. It came from somewhere in the middle cars, a hollow bang, 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 irregular but insistent. Reeves flinched and glanced at me. "Don't," he said. "It could be freight loose," I argued. "We have to check." He shook his head. "Not in this. Could be a person." Another volley rattled through the hull, closer this time. Through the rear window, I saw a figure running along the ballast, soaked, stumbling with one arm raised. "Stop the train," I hissed.
Reeves's jaw worked, but he gave a single yank to the brake. The cars screamed as we ground against the rails, sparks flaring beneath us. The figure caught up fast, slamming against the side door, banging hard enough to dent the sheet metal. "Help me!" a woman's voice shouted. "Please, I fell off the last run!" Every part of me froze. Reeves's hand shot out, grabbing my sleeve. "You open that door and we all ride with her, understand?" The plea came again, weaker, drenched in wind. "I can't run anymore. They're coming!" I tore free of him before thinking. Heart pounding, I fumbled the emergency crank and heaved the door open. Cold rain burst inside, stinging like glass. Nobody stood on the step. Only black water pouring from the sky and the blur of trees sliding past. Then a hand rose from below the frame, pale fingers gripping the ledge. She hauled herself up, gasping. For 1 second I saw her face. Gray skin, eyes full of reflected headlight, hair plastered tight to her scalp. And then recognition sucker punched me. It was Evelyn Kerr. Same name, same dimples from the newspaper photo. She collapsed onto the deck, body dripping and still curling steam as if she'd walked from fire, not rain.
Behind me, Reeves whispered, "Rule 5. The train always collects more than freight."
Evelyn Kerr shouldn't have been able to climb aboard. The deck was slick, and the train still moving slow. But she'd hauled herself up like the wind lifted her. She knelt on hands and knees, head bowed, water pooling beneath her palms. "Easy," I said, reaching out. The skin of her wrist felt colder than the metal rail. She flinched from my touch and straightened slowly. The lamplight hit her face then, and my mouth went dry. Every detail matched the newspaper photo, the widow's peak, the small scar at her chin. Yet her eyes were black from corner to corner, the irises gone, reflecting the lamp like glass marbles. She smiled politely, as passengers do when they first meet the conductor. "Ticket, please," she whispered. The phrase struck me like déjà vu. "Tickets, please." The voice from the rails. Reeves stood frozen in the doorway between cars. The silver coin dangled still in his hand. "You can't be here," he said hoarsely. "You already rode." Her smile didn't move. "The manifest was wrong." I opened my mouth, but the air thickened. Every breath condensed in front of us as frost laced across the windows. The rhythmic clack of wheels dulled to a sluggish thud, as if sound itself had to push through ice.
She held out a slip of paper, a ticket, edges bleeding black ink that dripped like oil onto the floor. My name shimmered faintly in the smear. "No," I muttered, refusing to touch it. Her head tilted. "Then who rides in your place?" Reeves shoved me backward and slammed the door between cars. The glass fogged instantly from the burst of freezing air left on our side. He heaved the manual lock across, chest pumping fast. Through the frost, I saw her shape linger, studying the barrier. The ink drip at her feet spread wider, seeping into the metal seam. The smell of lilacs flooded the cabin, sweet, chemical, unbearable. Reeves spun the deadbolt again for good measure. "She's not flesh," he gasped. "She's paper and breath and ash. You let her on. Now you keep her counted." "What does that mean?" He gripped my collar. "You gave her a name to print. Don't read it. Don't say it. Pretend she's never been." Behind the door, knuckles tapped glass slowly. 3 beats, then a pause. When I dared peek, the window was empty. Only the faint outline of a handprint remained smudged backward from the other side. The lights above flickered twice and steadied. Reeves slumped into his seat and muttered something that could have been prayer or curse. I stared at the frozen door, every nerve swimming. Rule 4. Don't pick up passengers between towns. I had broken it, and the train had collected far more than freight. Dawn should have burned the nightmare away, but the light that crept over the ridge was the color of tarnished brass. The storm had vanished without trace. Rails steamed, trees stood slick and black. The world smelled of iron shavings. Reeves hadn't spoken since locking the door. An hour later, when I turned to ask if he wanted coffee, he wasn't there. His seat sat empty, the silver coin laid neatly on the console. The throttle still held at steady speed, the engine obeying ghost hands. I searched the length of the cab, the service corridor, even stepped into the first car calling his name. No answer, only the hollow sigh the train gives when the wind dies around it. The door to car 9 was open again. Steam curled outward, white against the gray morning. I knew better. Every rule screamed to stay inside. But some gravities can't be disobeyed twice. Lantern in hand, I looked through the gap. The seats this time weren't empty. People filled them. Men in work coats, women in Sunday best, a child clutching a paper toy. Faces gray as fog, eyes closed, lips scarcely moving with each rhythmic chant. "Present," they whispered.
Their voices slid together until the word became the sound of the rails themselves. The vibration traveled up my legs.
At the far end sat Reeves, upright, motionless. Frost crusted his beard. In his lap rested the manifest. He looked peaceful, like someone satisfied to finish a shift. I tore my gaze away, stumbling back into the freight car. The door clanged shut of its own accord, sealing with a hiss. In the cab, a fresh manifest had printed from the ticker, paper curling in neat coils. I unfolded it with shaking hands. New date, new train number. First name, Reeves A. Next, Riley T. My own, ink still wet, gleaming in the brass dawn. I let the paper drop to the floor where it trembled with the rhythm of the wheels. The gauge dials turned themselves, the radio clicked softly alive. Over the whisper of static, a woman's voice asked, gentle and professional, "Tickets, please?" The train began to slow, though no brakes were touched, grinding into a nameless siding, buried in the fog. The rules hadn't saved us. They just kept the schedule running.
I write this in the station master's office, using a typewriter that rattles in time with a train that shouldn't still be moving. Outside, the yard is quiet. The sun burns behind low clouds, yet the rails gleam wet as if something heavy just passed. Engine 42 isn't here. I can still hear her in the distance, hauling freight to places no map lists. Steady, tireless, unending. They'll find Reeves' badge missing, my log unsigned. The company will shrug, mark us as accidents, another derailment in fog. But you and I know the truth. Trains don't derail when they're being driven. It's me now. That's how it works. The manifest adds 2 names each run, one to replace, one to prepare. They don't select us for skill. They pick anyone who hears them. The radio, the whisper in the steel, the urge to answer. Once you listen long enough to understand, your name prints itself. I've tried burning the paper, tearing it. Another curls out each dawn, crisp as ever. My name climbing higher on the list. I stay because someone must. If the line runs empty, the gates between towns don't stay shut. Reeves told me that before the flog took him. Better one of us than all of them, he said. Now I understand. Every time this train completes its loop, something hungry stays fed. The dead ride, the living sleep, and the rails hum safely underfoot. But signs are shifting.
Last night, the radio carried new voices, station operators calling cities that don't exist, asking for clearances from years still ahead of us. The clocks in the cab gain minutes each circuit. The rails themselves glow faint under moonlight, as if the whole route were heating from below. If the schedule ever stops, if the count breaks, I think the passengers will finally arrive rather than pass through. So I keep her moving. I read the rules each dusk. I ring the whistle 3 times when fog thickens, because that's what the old conductors did, and some habits keep the dark respectful. If you ever take the South Line after midnight and feel the carriage sway a little too smoothly, don't panic. Just close your eyes. Don't look at the windows. Reflections there don't always match the people sitting across from you. When the conductor passes, hand him nothing. If he seems distracted, if his hands shake, leave him be. That means he's still alive. And whatever you do, never speak if the loudspeaker crackles with an unscheduled stop. Never step onto a platform that isn't named. Trains aren't supposed to stop in fog. If they do, it's not for passengers like you. Because the manifest never ends. It only changes lines. Maybe someday another rookie will find this note in a locker and laugh the way I laughed at Reeves. Maybe he'll ignore it until he hears a woman's voice through the rails asking, "Tickets, please." Maybe he'll realize too late that every track eventually connects to this one. Until then, I'll keep the whistle blowing. It warns the towns we're passing, reminds the sleepers to stay asleep. It also reminds me I'm still here, at least for now. If you stand near the crossing and hear that sound tonight,
Step back and let us pass. Don't wave. We can't wave back anymore. The passengers might think you're signaling them, and they love invitations. A train that no longer carries the living keeps the living world safe by movement alone. Pray she never runs late. If this story carried you all the way to the final stop, like the video. It keeps the line running. Subscribe for new horror stories every week. Comment below, would you board a midnight train if the conductor asked for your name, not your ticket? The manifest is already printing again, and the next name has space for yours.